telepathic communication is mind to mind. Humans are verbal. We make a lot of noise. But the non-humans appear to have almost instantaneous thought words. They work in symbols, they work in numbers. Whatever is happening in their minds, it's huge downloads all at once. Back in the early 1980s was the first time that I was introduced by a kind of whistleblower person in Army military, active at the time actually, to the notion that there is a secret war, and that the secret war has been ongoing around this planet, in this planet, underneath the surface of this planet for millennia. And that the forces that conflict with each other is a mystery, or was a mystery to this man, except that our government was very concerned about who are our allies really and who are our enemies. And that's the way it was laid out to me. And in the process of describing that, this man told me that he was involved in a group, that they would get some kind of a call and they would go to wherever there was either a landing or a crash or some sort of interaction with something in the non-human category on this earth. And we've heard about Projects Pounce and Moondust and these various groups that since the 1940s Truman had organized, MJ-12, Majestic 12, and that part of their work was to have units that were trained. They were top secret, they couldn't talk to anybody, but their jobs were to go to any location on the planet where there might be either a crash or non-humans doing something, and we wanted to get there and monitor. And he said, we have been able to send signals to the Ebens, another type, that are gray. They have heads that are shaped like a pear. They have eyes that are not black lenses, that they are large and usually dark, but not the lens type. And they sent out a frequency asking for help. And that one of the gray craft went to this town in Arizona, met up with our military people. This man telling me this was firsthand, this was his experience. And he said his superior officer came to him and said, one of the Ebens has agreed to let you, the man who's telling me his firsthand story, have the experience of having a telepathic download so you'll know what it is like. And his superior officer said that they had an agreement. The being knew that humans are very alarmed when these creatures float above the ground. That is their preferred state because they have technology that neutralizes gravity. But they know that humans get upset by things that float in the air, and so he said he's agreed to stay on the ground. And when they walk on the ground, they waddle, and it will be funny. It will look like Donald Duck. Be prepared for it. And then he will get to a point where he will start coming toward you in a straight line. At about 6 to 7 feet away, he will stop. You will want to run. You will feel like when we do flamethrower drills, your entire body is going to be feeling fear. And this is an order. I want you to stand your ground. I don't care how much you want to run. I want you to experience this telepathic download. Now the guy telling me this is 6'3", 6'4", a big guy, and he said, I thought, oh, give me a break. I'm not a child. I'm ready for this. Here comes the being. It's waddling. It looks like Donald Duck in a cartoon. It makes him feel like he wants to laugh. He's hearing his boss telling him exactly what's going to happen. This thing is waddling, coming up. And he said when it got to about 6 feet, his entire legs began to shake. He wanted to run. He felt like he was going to faint, and he said the only thing that kept me standing there is that I knew that my superior officer was off to the left about 30 feet, and by God, I was not going to fall apart in front of him. So I stood there, but Linda, it was terrifying. And then he said, the beam's head tilted up. And he said, when those eyes met my eyes, I lost all control. He said, the best I can tell you, if you took 7 Hollywood movies and you started running them through your mind all at once, sound, temperature, touch, everything is going on in 7 storylines, and on top of every one of the films are 3-dimensional gold hieroglyphs. The symbols are running on top of all of the film. And I realized my mind is trying to ask questions, and with every question my mind is trying to ask, it's making another one of these branching movies. And his boss had told him that when you faint, we'll be there to catch you. And he thought that that was such nonsense that until that moment, with all of these films running through his head, it had never occurred to him that he would ever faint in his life, and he lost consciousness. It was 3 solid hours later. When he opened his eyes, he was lying in a cot in a room. They had caught him. They had put him in a bed. 3 hours to recover, and when he opened his eyes, he was still not able to sit up and get off of the bed. And he said, Linda, that's what my superior officer wanted me to understand. We all would like, just like Spielberg's movie of the little E.T. that got drunk in the kitchen on beer. We'd like to have extraterrestrials take us to Starbucks and sit down and have coffee and tell us about the universe. And he said it's never going to happen, because the difference between the way our mind works and their minds work, they're overwhelming. And what happened is that I got a call that I might be able to talk to the man who lived with one of the Ebens retrieved from the Roswell region and had been taken to Los Alamos National Lab between 1949 and June 18, 1952, when this being died of unknown causes, is the way the document read that I was shown. And backtracking from that death, this was the story that I was to hear from the man there at the site in Roswell. He was with a group. They had gotten word that there had been a UFO crash. There is not a date on this in terms of July 2nd to 4th, 1947, that we know that there were 3 crashes. This might have happened somewhere later in 48 or 49. And by then, these groups that were in Project Pounce and Moondust that were trained to come to where there was any kind of an interaction with what were being called by our government extraterrestrial biological entities, they were trained to move in a group into a location. There would be some that would pack up the, let's call it the metal wreckage or technology that they found, and there would be others in the group that would be focused on the bodies, alive or dead, of the extraterrestrial biological entities. And where this story starts is that the group was moving in and they could see bodies. And the man who is talking to me said, all of a sudden, in his mind, he felt pain, heard like a cry, high-pitched, the other men are moving and he stops because he doesn't know, he can't see anything in front of him, but he's feeling this horror inside of his own mind, and he is absolutely paralyzed with what is happening to me? Is this something here? And he couldn't see anything. He didn't at that point say anything to the men around him. He was completely disoriented by what was happening in his head. And not only was he hearing this high pitch, he was seeing images. He said it was like I was getting flashes, like slides of something, he said, and maybe it was like I was looking through a window. Maybe it was dust. Maybe this was the crash. Maybe this is what was happening, and it's being put into my mind. And I started to move, and I walked, and the other men were on, and I realized something is pulling me. It felt like I was being pulled by jello to come and look right at a place. And then he realizes there's debris, there is a dark shadow, and that he walked over to the debris and he picked up something, and here is a live being, not human. And when he picked up the debris, that what came into his mind at that moment, because now it was eye-to-eye contact with this being lying in the debris, was everything. What happened, how the whatever went, the malfunction, what they were seeing as the craft went down, the crash, all of it, and then the overriding pain that this being was feeling. And that's when he told everybody there, come, look at this. This is alive. We need to help. Because he was able to see pictures, get sound, feel emotion, it was decided that his assignment from there on out was he was going to stay with this being. They transferred both to Los Alamos. And for that period of time, as I understand, it was in the year 1949, I believe. From there to June 18, 1952, they lived together. And there were two sentences that I was told by this man of the downloads that he got during that period of time. He said it was like being with a child with the mind of 1,000 men. He would have these image exchanges and thought exchanges that for some reason he could get from this being and nobody else could. Our government began realizing that they needed to find translators. They needed to find talented people who could get the images and the numbers and the thought words from these beings. And they started looking for translators. That's the category this man became. But he said at one point, in all of their word exchanges in their minds with seeing pictures and symbols, that this being was explaining about where they came from and the cosmos, and this sentence or sentences: we made you, we put you here, but you have to live it. And this man looked at me and he said, Linda, you know what I've come to understand from this being that I live with and I loved? The machinery of this universe is reincarnation, the recycling of souls. We treat the soul and recycling like mythology. These beings seem to be communicating that the most important part of our life as human beings was the soul and what happened at the moment of death.